The Philadelphia 76ers are kind of a weird team. They have a good roster, but this was a team that finished 13th in the Eastern Conference and only won 24 games last year. So how good are the 76ers really, and what can they look like in this upcoming season? Welcome to 30 Teams in 30 Days, let's get into it. So Philadelphia had an awful season. Obviously there was some regression in their stars like Paul George, many of their major players dealt with injuries, and off the court stuff wasn't perfect for this team either. They were a bottom 5 defense, a bottom 10 offense, and a bottom 5 3-point shooting team. But despite all this, they do have multiple star level players as well as a decent bench and some young guys for Sixers fans to look forward to. So let's start off with my favorite player on the Philadelphia 76ers, and that is Tyrese Maxey. So last season, Maxey averaged 26, 3, and 6 on 43, 33, 88 shooting splits. He's been Philly's best distributor, he is their most consistent player, he's developed as a shot creator, leader, and even as a defender. Despite having a little bit of an efficiency drop because of the fact that he took on more of a role in the offense, he is still one of the best guards in the league, and he just played a smaller amount of games due to a finger injury, and because of the 76ers not competing, there just wasn't a reason to risk his health. Going alongside him, of course, is the former MVP, All-Star, All-NBA player, that being Joel Embiid. Embiid is coming off one of the worst seasons of his career. Even for the injury-prone big man himself, this was a bad year from injuries as knee injuries kept him out and he only played in 19 games. In those 19 games, he also just wasn't quite himself as the stats did drop off from just a few years ago. He averaged 24 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists on 44, 30, 88 shooting splits. He is still going to be in Philly for a while as he did sign a contract extension in September of 2024, and he is someone that I think can turn it around. Yes, Embiid is one of the more injury-prone superstars that we have ever seen, but I do hope, especially with the most recent knee surgery that he had this offseason, that Embiid will be better in the future and at least get back to his somewhat regular self. Of course, the big question with Embiid is him getting to the playoffs. Yes, Embiid has never been the best playoff performer, but I really can't even think of a time that Embiid's been fully healthy in the playoffs. And I mean, especially last time we saw him dealing with Bell's palsy, like that was scary as hell to see him rush himself out onto the court like that only to get injured again. I genuinely love post talents, and even though I've previously said that history's not going to be kind to Joel Embiid, I at least want to see him have a fair chance, and it seems like we've really only gotten so much of that. And then of course Embiid is also at his off the court stuff. There were team meetings where Tyrese Maxey of all people called him out for apparently being late to team related events. He was suspended 3 games for shoving a reporter, albeit this was justified because the reporter was making comments about his dead brother, so nothing really bad. So unfortunately that did happen to him. Unfortunately, it looks like his attitude just did cause issues, and you know, that was what Maxey called him out for, but I really want to see Embiid turn it around because I think he is still one of the best superstars in the NBA despite everything. And I'm still calling him one of their key star players, but Paul George, Podcast P, this was really unfortunate. I don't know a single person who actually dislikes Paul George. I genuinely always root for him and I want to see him do well. You know, he's one of the most fun guys in the league to watch, but last year was a major regression from him, especially on the offensive side of things. Paul George averaged a measly 16 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists on 43, 35, 81 shooting splits. This was the worst season for him in well over a decade. Basically, every aspect of his game fell off, and he just wasn't that efficient scorer we knew him as. Technically, he was a positive defender according to his on-off rating, so there is still some upside in that regard. But he is one of the worst contracts in the NBA, making $50 million per year until 2028. But despite all this, I still believe in Paul George, and I think last year was kind of an abnormal year for him. According to NBA.com, he listed in the 80th percentile in isolation, handoff, and spot-up scoring. I believe he still can be an efficient player shooting the ball. He was about a 40% catch and shoot player. I think he could still be that smooth podcast Paul George player that we all know him as. I think next year is going to be a bit of an uplifting season for Paul. I don't think he's going to be what he was back when he was like on the Clippers or even OKC, but I think Paul George is still going to come back maybe around 18 points per game, but ideally I want to see him more efficient regardless of how much he scores. If Paul George can be efficient and play good defense, he's still going to be overpaid, but he won't be as bad of a player as he was. And then you can call him a rotational player. I kind of want to call him a star, but he's really more of a rotational player, but he's still a very key player for the 76ers, and that's actually Jared McCain. So Jared McCain had an incredible rookie season until a meniscus tear ruled him out for the season. He played 23 games, but in those games, he averaged about 15, 2, and 2, while shooting 38% from 3. Comparing his stats to last year's Rookie of the Year Stephon Castle, you could make an argument that McCain probably would have been in lining to win Rookie of the Year. Add on top of that, Jared McCain was excellent during his stretch as a starter. In the 8 games he started for the Sixers, he averaged 24 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists on an insane 60% true shooting percentage. Yes, a player can heat up for an 8-game stretch. However, being that consistent and scoring that well over 8 games typically shows that you are due for more minutes. McCain is going to be just 21 years old in the upcoming season, so I think he is well due for a leap. He gives Philly that scoring. He gives them especially that 3-point shooting. As I said, they're a bottom 5 3-point shooting team. And he gives them just like that playmaking that I think this team's really going to need. They are undersized, but even him and Tyrese Maxey were technically a positive duo when they played together, albeit it was 2 guards that are 6'2", so it'd be kind of like a Cleveland Cavaliers strategy. Even if he doesn't start, which I wouldn't be surprised if he's more of a 6th man for the 76ers, he is just part of this team's amazing guard depth. Because another guy who they had, he started a lot of games and he might be starting, might be coming off the bench, but another guy who played pretty well in Philly, and that was Quentin Grimes. So Grimes came in midway through the season as he was traded for Caleb Martin, but in his 28 games as a 76er, he averaged 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game while shooting 37% from 3. He had multiple 30-point games, and he had 2 40-point explosions for the 76ers. I likely think he's going to start over Jared McCain, but I think the competition between these two are going to be close. But this isn't even all the depth that they have, because at the 3rd overall pick, the 76ers landed VJ Edgecombe. The guard coming out of Baylor averaged 15, 5, and 3, and he just now turned 20 years old at the day that I make this. Edgecombe is an elite athlete. He is a solid outside shooter who shot 34% at Baylor. He's a high-level driver, playmaker, and he's a very good defender as well. Now, this is what I've read scouts saying, so this isn't my opinion, but I've heard scouts say that he has that it factor. He has that mentality. He passes the eye test. You watch him, and he's a guy that people can call a future superstar. 2 comparisons that I saw to a guy like Edgecombe could be someone like Victor Oladipo, but I've also seen a ceiling all the way up to that of Dwayne Wade. So even though all of them are a little bit undersized, the 76ers have 4 really good guards, and even just having 2 of these guys come off the bench is still going to put your team in a really good position. Unfortunately, this is where the depth of the 76ers kind of trails off a little bit. I do think they lack a little bit of size coming off of the bench, but there are still a few guys to mention. Andre Drummond, in his age, is still a solid backup center who technically gives positive minutes. He also averaged 3 offensive boards per game in his limited time last year. We probably won't see them play much, but Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon are 2 veterans. Lowry was another guy who was slightly positive, but he barely played at all last year, and Eric Gordon is still a 40% shooter, but Lowry's like 39, Gordon's like 36, 37. Not really a whole reason to see these guys play, especially when the 76ers have so many good young guards. Justin Edwards is coming off of a pretty solid rookie season. He averaged 10 points, 3 rebounds, and an assist a half per game, 45 and 36 from the field. Solid rookie season, and he actually ended up starting in 26 of the 44 games for the 76ers. That's not uncommon though, because with all the injuries that this team dealt with, a lot of different players managed to start games, and that allowed guys like Edwards and guys like McCain to get valuable experience. A big loss in this offseason for the 76ers was the loss of Gershon Yabusele, but I do think that they're going to get somewhat of a return for him in Trendon Watford from the Brooklyn Nets. Watford is a forward who's going to give this team some decent size, and he is coming off of the best year of his career, as Watford averaged 10, 3, and 2 for the Nets. And going along with him at the forward position is the sexiest man in the league, Kelly Oubre Jr. Oubre Jr. is still one of the better forwards in the league, who I think is the perfect guy to come off the bench, or the perfect guy to be playing alongside Paul George, as we did see him start a lot of last season. Oubre is still a consistent player. Last year, he averaged 15 points per game with 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He's a good cutter, he's a good 3-point shooter, shooting 38% from 3, and he was a positive on both offense and defense for the Sixers. Even though it is a small lineup in an era where we're kind of seeing the NBA trend towards big lineups, we could be looking at the 76ers run a lineup of like Tyrese Maxey. Tough to say who they're going to have at the shooting guard. I could see it being McCain, I could see it being Edgecombe, I could see it being Grimes, I could see it being a rotation of the 3, but they're going to to have a good player there nonetheless. And then you have Kelly Oubre Jr. at the 3, you have Paul George at the 4, Joel Embiid at the 5. That is a lineup that has pretty good spacing on a team that doesn't have a lot of good spacing. You get good playmaking because you're going to have 3 high-level playmakers out there, 3.5 if you count Joel Embiid. You're going to get consistent scoring as Embiid plus Maxey is good for 50 points per game. You surround one of the best post scorers that you've ever seen with good shooters. And then you get an improved Tyrese Maxey on defense. You get Joel Embiid's defense. You get Paul George's defense. You get Kelly Oubre Jr.'s defense. And then suddenly you have a lineup that is much improved. Both the starters and the bench for the 76ers last season was bottom 10, but that makes sense. They had so many injuries. They had roster fluctuations. You look at last year's roster and basically every guy ended up starting in a game. So the question with the 76ers, of course, is health. Can Maxey stay healthy? Can McCain come back from his meniscus tear? Can Embiid, of course, stay healthy? That's always been the question of his career. And I kind of doubt it just a little bit, because why would I believe that Embiid would stay healthy? I want him to be healthy. I want to see what a fully strength Embiid is. Of course, the league is at its best when as many superstars are healthy, but I don't know why I would believe that. But looking at the potential of this team, I think this team has a really high potential. I say it time and time again. No Celtics, no Pacers, wide open Eastern Conference. Yes, the Knicks and the Cavaliers are my personal 2 picks to be the number 1 and 2 in the East, but I think the 76ers could have a decent dark horse run. If things somehow get miraculous and all these guys stay healthy, I don't see why this couldn't be a really good team that at least makes the second round. Of course, making the second round has been the statement for Joel Embiid's career, but I think this is one of the better teams he's been on. He's got spacing, he's got defense, he's got playmaking, there's flexibility. I'm a little worried about the bench, and I'm a little worried what if Embiid gets injured, then they don't really have consistent size. Albeit I didn't talk about the whole 76ers roster, but I didn't think every single player is worth mentioning, and having Andre Drummond in the year of our Lord 2025 to 2026, he's a decent backup center, but he can't play consistent starting center minutes. Health is going to be huge for the 76ers. I said it in my last video about the Orlando Magic, which you should go check out after this. But if they stay healthy, this is one of the better rosters in the Eastern Conference. While I expect the Magic to take a leap, and I expect the Hawks to be a huge improvement, and like I said earlier, I expect the Knicks and Cavaliers to be good, I think the 5 spot and below is going to be wide open, and I think that is where we can see the 76ers compete and possibly get a little better than that. I could see them in that 3 to 5 range depending on how other teams lay out. Regardless of who is on the court, you're probably going to have 2 starting level guards. And guys who control the game, guys who make plays, guys who space the floor. Having 2 starting level players on the court like that at all time is going to be huge, even if I'm not the most confident in your backup forwards and centers. So if the 76ers are healthy, watch out, because if your favorite team is going against them, they might just be in trouble. This was 30 and 30. If you liked the video, you know what to do, and I will catch you all next time.